Hello and welcome to the Wheel of Crime podcast. The podcast is ran by two ladies who play games, mumble profanities, and laugh way too often. Also, this podcast does cover topics of sensitive nature, and as such, listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, listeners. This is my creepy voice because we are in the thick of Spooktober, and my name is Jen. Welcome back to the Wheel of Crime podcast.
And my name is Emily. It sounds like you're half-assing a, Dracula accent.
It kind of turned into Dracula at the end there, but it wasn't my intention going into it.
Oh, okay, I see you. Yes, we're climbing up to the end of the month here soon. Man, has time gone by fast.
It has gone by faster than you guys can even imagine. I don't know where the month went and how we're already here.
I know, but I'm ready. I've got my little spooky ghost socks on. Bells and whistles,
Cute.
as they say. I have nothing to tell you about other than I've really been doing my best to get out and enjoy this fall season with the leaves changing and the cold air and the marshmallows and all these things that I told you I was looking forward to. Just really getting into it.
Yes, as have I. Work has taken over my life per usual, but I am still enjoying the fall. It's still a vibe, still my favorite season. Been watching lots of spooky ass movies as usual, and I love it. I love that for me. So, yeah, that's basically all that's new with me.
Yeah, I've been looking into making simmer pots because apparently that's a thing that people who live in houses do, where you put a bunch of autumnal things together in a pot and then you simmer it, and sometimes you can make it into a homemade apple cider. So it makes your house smell nice and it's delicious. And so I think I might be dabbling in that here once I got a spare moment outside of my work, and that's my plan.
You've never done that before? Oh, it's so good. Get some apples in there, get some cinnamon, some cloves. Oh, what a vibe. It makes your house smell amazing.
Right? So that is my next goal. But my current goal is to spin the wheel of questions and get this thing going. We are doing Season of the Witch this week, and boy, am I excited.
Me too. So let's spin for our questions.
Alright, so what do you think about modern day witchcraft compared to historical witchcraft? Because I feel like sometimes things like to evolve and change, but do you think that from what you know about modern day witchcraft that's changed much compared to historical witchcraft, or
I think last year for our witchy episode I covered a modern day, I think we both covered modern day witchcraft crimes last year, if I'm not mistaken. I feel like now, okay, it was always sad when people were accused and executed for being witches, but I think the time and space, historically, oh, this happened in the 1600s, kind of lends itself to making me feel distance from these people, whereas the modern day stuff kind of hits a lot harder because of our advancements in technology. I'm there's no way that this should still be happening, but it is.
Oh yeah, for sure. On the darker end of things, I know it's a hard look to be you think you've progressed so far, and then you think about it and you're but not far enough. Whereas
definitely not.
As far as practicing witches go, I don't really know too much about it, but I do feel maybe nowadays it's not quite as it's definitely not as biased as what it used to be, but like you were saying, there's definitely a ways to go yet, I think.
The stuff that bothers me is the witch trials in current times, and it just feels like another reason why women who are in these,
it's another crime against women.
Yeah, it's another crime against women who are just in remoter, more remote communities, and it just feels real shitty. I don't love it.
Yep, you hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned with that one. So let's spin for our next question. So, on a different end of things, if you were a witch from like fantasy time world, like D&D, because it's interesting, just as a quick sidebar to kind of like add to this question a little bit, it's very interesting to me how we do know witchcraft in its more traditional sense and kind of where it started, but in another way, it's kind of segued itself into this kind of fantastical, fictional sense where like everybody's familiar with like, you know, like fictional retellings of what witches are like. So if you were a particular type of witch, like kind of what's been portrayed in like D&D and other fantasy worlds, what would you envision yourself to be like?
Oof, that's a hard question. If I could be any witch, I would want to be Marty from Halloween Town.
How did I know this was coming? Every year without fail, you bring up Halloween Town, and I've still never seen this movie series.
Oh my god, I don't think I realized that.
I literally went through this whole thing last year where I told you I'd never seen Halloween Town, and you made that exact same face, and you're like, you've never seen Halloween Town? And it's like, I was banned from watching television until I was 12 years old. What makes you think I saw Halloween Town?
I'm sorry, this is just shocking information. I think I repressed it because it was so shocking.
Okay. Well, I'll accept that, actually. I could see the shock on your face. But no, I have not seen Halloween Town. But I knew this answer was coming. I could feel it.
I have failed as your bestie girl for not showing you this fucking movie by now.
You're like, you've
I'm
caught
sorry.
me slacking, and you will never catch me slacking again.
I would like to formally apologize.
See, like, but like, so what kind of witch is she then? Because I'm probably not the only person who doesn't know who she is, but like, I don't know who else would know. But so like, what does she do?
She's a good witch, and she vibes, except for in the last movie when they replaced her with Sarah Paxton, but we don't talk about that.
So is
she's constantly
she's just like a good
saving.
witch?
Yeah, she's saving Halloween Town every fucking time. The first time from Calabar, the second time, well, I won't spoil it for you for the second and third movie.
Okay.
But all you need to know is Marnie is cool as fuck.
Noted. See, for myself, I'm a big old nerd. So I feel
Yes.
like as far as like witchy type stuff goes, like if I had to envision myself in this fictional world where witches are like a thing and like they do all these different cool things, I like to think that I would be the kind who like Harry Potter, for example. I would want to be a witch who's like somebody who is like good at charms, maybe potions class, you know, like riddle-dee-dee, here's a poem and now I'm going to turn you into a rabbit kind of witch. I would not mind riding on a broom. I think that actually sounds kind of fun to be able to just grab anything from your house and take off and go to work without paying any gas. That speaks to me.
Yeah, same.
Right? Or, what would be another one? Or, like, I do like the idea of having control over the elements, like, through being, like, a witch. So, like, having the ability to, like, work within nature or, like, one of those types of things would be cool.
That would be cool. I could see the witch lifestyle for you, if I'm being honest. I think it would suit you.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like literally, broomstick, potions class, forest. It speaks to me. I love it.
You just described yourself in like 3 words.
See, that's what I'm telling you. So that's kind of what I'm vibing towards, but I also wouldn't mind being the kind of witch, like, what they have in Charmed, where it's just, like, 3 besties who are also sisters, and they're like, we read from a book, and it's magical, hello, and like, call it good. And they wear cool outfits. I love the 90s witch fashion style. That also speaks to me.
Me too. I've never seen Charmed, but 90s witch, that's a vibe. Like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, like the OG
Oh yeah.
series, that's the vibe. Early 2000s.
The vibe. Exactly. Well, I mean, on that note, we can always spin for our next question.
Spin away, Em.
All right. So, what do you think of, like, the portrayal of witches in today's world media?
I feel like witches have a very different portrayal than they used to. I think people kind of think they're cool now.
Yeah, okay, that was gonna be my edge too. Is that most of what I've seen is either like like if it's on like the more like bashing end of it, they're like, look at this ridiculous thing, people actually believe this. But then so it's almost like seen kind of like as a joke. But then on the other end too, it's kind of a little bit more of like a glamorized spiritual thing.
Yeah. They've got their black cats and
Yeah,
their broomsticks.
as
their name is Emily.
Yeah, as my literal black cat walks in front of my face and wraps my neck around her tail, wraps her tail around my neck, same fucking thing, I guess. Context, who we don't know her. But yeah, no, it is very different. I also saw that, especially on social media, for example, just as a direct comparison to world media, because I feel like that's kind of the closest that we can get to nowadays, is people, it is much more of a bigger, like I said, spiritual movement that people like to either they're really on board with it because they think it's something really cool to be a part of, or that it's just completely nonsensical and they're like, look at all these weird people who think this, right?
Exactly. I would agree with that. I think that's pretty on point.
Yeah, that means we're on to our last question. Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay, so would you have been burned as a witch back then? And if you were, why would you have been burned at the stake?
Probably for being a childless woman who isn't married.
Yeah, that checks out.
Why
funny.
would you be burned at the stake, Emily?
Well, that's the thing. So I thought this question was kind of funny because there's literally so many things you could have been burned for that it's more about like what's the first thing that pops into your mind. And so for me, I was like, honestly, I probably would have been burned at the stake just because people beefed with me a lot when I was a kid. So maybe they thought, and I was like a weird kid, so they'd be like, oh, she's got weird things about her, or something's not normal. And then I would have gotten older and been like, here's my tattoos and piercings. And they'd be like, that's it. She's a witch. We gotta sink her.
She's been kissed by the devil. Burn her at the stake.
Literally. Like, I feel like it would not take that much. Like, if your goal was to be burned at the stake, I feel like there's not that much more you could do. It would just be more about meeting the right people who'd be like, you're a witch, let's get ya, you know?
I mean, you could probably start the rumors about yourself and just expedite the process.
Right, and then call it a day. But yeah, so that's our last question. I feel like, so I was going through my notes a little bit, and I did already give the description of a witch last year, so I'll give an unofficial one, and then a more descriptive one from my story. So the unofficial description of a witch is a person who is seen to be either portrayed or a practitioner of pagan-type activities, usually. It's very deeply involved in spiritualism. There is, of course, the more fantastical sense, which I kind of talked about, where there is a lot of fictitious information, but more or less it is somebody who just engages in spiritual practices or rituals that are outside of most established religions, is what it means.
Agreed.
Yes. And
So, with that, I'll just get right into my story.
Yeah, I'm ready.
On March 18th, 1612, a young woman by the name of Alison Device was out begging on the road of Cologne, which is a small town in England. She stopped a peddler named John Law, who was from Halifax, and asked him for a pin. 17th century metal pins were handmade and relatively expensive, but they were frequently needed for magical purposes, such as healing, particularly for treating warts, divination, and for love magic, which may have been why Alison was so keen to get a hold of them and why John was so reluctant to sell them to her. Nonetheless, John refused her request and walked away. Alison said her familiar spirit in the shape of a dog appeared and asked her if she would like it to harm John. Alison was new to the family business of witchcraft and told the dog to lame the peddler. The curse took immediate effect, and John fell to the ground, paralyzed down one side, which is now thought to have been a stroke, and he was unable to speak. He was taken to a local inn, and later Alison was brought to his bedside. She admitted her part in his illness and begged his forgiveness, which he gave. However, John's son Abraham had become involved, and he was far from satisfied with her apology. He took the matter to Roger Nowell, the local magistrate, and from there, things snowballed at an alarming rate. After hearing the most awful admissions from those he interviewed, Roger made many arrests. By the end of April 19th, people were incarcerated in Lancaster Castle, awaiting trial at the August Assize. The trial of the Pendle Witches in 1612 are among the most famous witch trials in English history, and some of the best recorded of the 17th century. The 12 accused lived in the surrounding Pendle Hill in Lancashire and were charged with the murders of 10 people by the use of witchcraft. 6 of the Pendle witches came from one of 2 families, each at the time headed by a woman in her 80s. Elizabeth Southerns, who was the matriarch, known as Demdike, which I looked it up, and Demdike just means a cunning woman, her daughter Elizabeth Device, and her grandchildren James and Alison Device. Anne Whittle, who was the matriarch of the other family, was known as Chattox, and she was called this because of her habit of constantly muttering to herself, and her daughter Anne Redfern. The others accused were Jane Bulcock and her son John Bulcock, Alice Nutter, Catherine Hewitt, Alice Gray, and Jeanette Preston. The outbreaks of witchcraft in and around Pendle may suggest that the people made a living as traditional healers, using a mixture of herbal medicine and talismans or charms, which might leave them open to charges of sorcery. Many of the allegations resulted from accusation that members of the Demdike and Chattox families made against each other, perhaps because they were in competition, both trying to make a living from healing, begging, and extortion. Which I find fascinating, that they basically pointed the finger at each other.
Yeah, that doesn't usually happen, but I feel like maybe it's for a reason, and maybe I'll find out in a bit, but it is curious.
So, before the trials began, Demdike had been regarded in the area as a witch for 50 years, and some of the deaths of the witches were accused of had happened many years before Roger Norwell, our magistrate guy, started to take an interest in 1612. The encounter between Alison and John Law is thought to be the inciting incident for the trials, and as such, Alison, her mother, Elizabeth, and her brother James were summoned to appear before Roger on March 30th, 1612. Alison confessed that she had sold her soul to the devil and that he had told him to lame John after he called her a thief. Her brother James stated that his sister also confessed to bewitching a local child. Elizabeth was more reserved, admitting only that her mother, Demdike, had a mark on her body, something that many, including Roger, would regard to be having left by the devil after he had sucked her blood. So the devil's a vampire now.
Good for him. He's multifaceted, if anything.
Truly. When questioned about Anne Whittle, who is our matriarch gal Chattox, the matriarch of the other family reputedly involved in witchcraft in and around Pendle, Alison perhaps saw an opportunity for revenge. There may have been bad blood between the two families, possibly dating from 1601, when a member of Chattox's family broke into Malkin Tower, the home of the Devices, and stole goods worth about €1, which is now equivalent to €117. Alison accused Chattox of murdering 4 men by witchcraft and of killing her father, John Device, who had died in 1601. Alison claimed that her father had been so frightened of old Chattox that he had agreed to give her 8 pounds of oatmeal each year. Which is just such a weird thing to give her.
I would curse somebody if they gave me 8... How many years of oatmeal? 8 years of oatmeal?
8 pounds.
Oh,
8 pounds.
8 pounds of oatmeal. I would curse somebody if they were like, here is a gift. 8 pounds of oatmeal. And I'd be like, go fuck yourself with this oatmeal. I will not have it.
So he gave her 8 pounds of oatmeal each year in return for her promise not to hurt his family. The oatmeal was handed over annually until the year before John's death. On his deathbed, John claimed that his sickness had been caused by Chaddocks because they had not paid for protection with the fucking oatmeal.
I don't think there's a person on this goddamn earth who loves oatmeal that much. I'm telling you, literally if I received 8 pounds of oatmeal a year, I would curse them just for that. Just for that. No thank you.
Same.
Yeah, let's just surrender some soggy oats to protect our family. How about something nice, like mac and cheese?
There's so many options. Why oatmeal? We'll never know.
What if they just gave you 8 pounds of potatoes? That I would already be way happier with that.
I would be elated with 8 pounds of potatoes.
I would be protecting the whole country if somebody gave me 8 pounds of potatoes a year. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
I would take a bullet for them.
Literally.
On April 2nd, 1612, Demdike, Chaddocks, and Chaddocks' daughter Anne were summoned to appear before Roger. Both Demdike and Chaddocks were then blind and in their 80s, and both provided Roger with damaging confessions. Demdike claimed that she had given her soul to the devil 20 years previously, and Chaddocks that she had given her soul to, quote, a thing like a Christian man, on a promise that, quote, she would not lack anything and would get revenge she desired. Honestly, me and Chaddocks, same person. I understand.
Literally.
Although Anne Redfern made no confessions, Demdike said that she had seen her making clay figures. Margaret Crook, another witness seen by Roger that day, claimed that her brother had fallen sick and died after having a disagreement with Anne, and that he had frequently blamed her for his illness. Based on the evidence and confessions that he obtained, Roger committed Demdike, Chaddocks, Anne Redford, and Alison Device to Lancaster to be tried for causing harm by witchcraft at the assizes. The committal and subsequent frequent trial of the 4 women might have been the end of the matter had it not been for a meeting organized by Elizabeth Device at the Malkin Tower, the home of Demdike, held on Good Friday, April 10th, 1612. To feed the party, James Device stole a neighbor's sheep, and friends and others sympathetic to the family attended, and when word of it reached Roger, he decided to investigate. So literally, he's on a witch hunt for everyone who attended this fucking event.
Good luck, my friend. That's all I gotta say.
On April 27th, 1612, an inquiry was held before Roger and another magistrate, Nicholas Bannister, to determine the purpose of the meeting at the Malkin Tower, who had attended, and what had happened there. As a result of the inquiry, 8 more people were accused of witchcraft and committed for trial. Elizabeth Device, James Device, Alison Nutter, Catherine Hewitt, John Bullock, Jane Bullock, Alice Gray, and Jeanette Preston. Jeanette lived across the border in Yorkshire, so she was sent for trial at the York Assizes, and others were sent to Lancaster to join the 4 already imprisoned there. The Pendle Witches were tried in a group that also included the Samsbury Witches, who were James Southworth, Jeanette Burley, and Ellen Burley. The charges against whom included child murder and cannibalism. Margaret Pearson, the so-called Padiham witch, who was facing her 3rd trial for witchcraft, this time for kicking a horse, and Isobel Roby from Windle, accused of using witchcraft to cause sickness. I like how this one girl's just like, yeah, you kicked a horse, you're a witch, like, let's do this trial again.
I don't even know what to say to that. They're like, that's what I'm saying. That's what I was saying earlier. It's like, you can get accused of witchcraft for anything. Like, do you know how many random objects I've kicked in my life? And if somebody witnessed any of them, it was just like, yeah, you're a witch because you kicked this thing. It's like, well, fuck me, I guess. I don't know.
Like, I don't know how to disprove you, but okay. Sure, I guess I'm a witch now. So, some of the accused Pendle witches, such as Alison Device, seem to have genuinely believed in their guilt, but others protested their innocence to the end. Jeanette Preston was the first to be tried on July 27th, 1612 at York Assizes. So Jeanette was charged with the murder by witchcraft of a local landowner, Thomas Lister, of Westby Hall, to which she pleaded not guilty. She had already appeared before Bromley in 1611, accused of murdering a child by witchcraft, but had been found not guilty. The most damning evidence against her in this case was that she had been taken to see Thomas's body, the corpse, and it, quote, bled fresh blood presently in the precise of all that were present. So basically she touched the corpse and it bled, and they're like, you're a witch. You must have killed him.
Maybe bodies bleed sometimes? I don't even know what the fuck to say to that.
Me either. So she was found guilty and sentenced to death by hanging.
Of course. What else would happen?
Right? What other logical explanation could there be?
Oh, the story never is, she was
accused
of being a witch, so we let her go free and live her life the way that she wants to. No, it is always hanging. Never anything else.
Never. We're gonna go from 0 to 100 real quick. So all of the other accused stood trial between August 18th and 19th, 1612. 9-year-old Jeanette Device was a key witness for the prosecution, something that would not have been permitted in many other 17th century criminal trials. However, King James had made the case for suspending the normal rules of evidence for witchcraft trials. 9 of the accused, Alison Device, Elizabeth Device, James Device, Anne Whittle, Anne Redfern, Alice Nutter, Catherine Hewitt, John Bullock, and Jane Bullock, were found guilty during the 2-day trial and hanged at Gallows Hill in Lancaster on August 20th, 1612. Elizabeth Southerns died while awaiting trial. Only one of the accused, Alice Gray, was found not guilty. On August 18th, Anne Whittle, Chattox, was accused of murder of Robert Nutter. She pleaded not guilty, but the confession she had made to Roger Nowell, likely under torture, was read out in court, and evidence against her was presented by James Robinson, who had lived with the Chattox family 20 years earlier. He claimed to remember that Robert had accused Chattox of turning his beer sour, and that she was commonly believed to be a witch. Chattox broke down and admitted her guilt, calling on God for forgiveness and the judges to be merciful to her daughter, Anne Redfern. Elizabeth Device was charged with the murders of James Robinson, John Robinson, and together with Alice Nutter and Demdike, the murder of Henry Mitten. Elizabeth Device vehemently maintained her innocence. The main witness against Elizabeth was her daughter, Jeanette, who was 9. And when Jeanette was brought into the courtroom and asked to stand up and give evidence against her mother, Elizabeth, confronted with her own child making accusations that would lead to her execution, began to curse and scream at her daughter, forcing the judges to have her removed from the courtroom before the evidence could be heard. Jeanette was placed on a table and stated that she believed her mother had been a witch for 3 or 4 years. She also said that her mother had a familiar called Ball, who had appeared in the shape of a brown dog. Jeanette claimed to have witnessed conversations between Ball and her mother, in which Ball had been asked to help with various murders. James Device also gave evidence against his mother, saying that he had seen her making a clay figure of one of her victims, John Robinson. Elizabeth Device was found guilty. James Device pleaded not guilty to the murders by witchcraft of Anne Townley and John Duckworth. However, he, like Chattox, had made earlier confessions to Roger, which was read in court, and the evidence presented against him by his sister Jeanette, who had said that she had seen her brother asking a black dog he had conjured up to help him kill Anne Townley, was sufficient to persuade the judge to find him guilty. On August 19th, the trials of the 3 Salisbury witches were heard before Anne Redfern's first appearance in court late that afternoon, charged with the murder of Robert Nutter. The evidence against her was considered unsatisfactory and she was acquitted. Anne Redford was not so fortunate the following day when she faced her second trial for the murder of Robert Nutter's father, Christopher, to which she pleaded not guilty. Demdike's statement to Roger Nowell, which accused Anne of making the clay figures of the Nutter family, was read in court. Witnesses were called to testify that Anne was a witch, more dangerous than her mother, but she refused to admit her guilt in the end, and she had given no evidence against any others of the accused. Anne Redford was found guilty and hung. Jane Bullock and her son John Bullock were accused and found guilty of the murder by witchcraft of Jeanette Dean. Both denied that they had attended the meeting at the Malkin Tower, but Jeanette Device identified Jane as having been one of those present, and John as having turned the spit to roast the stolen sheep, the centerpiece of the Good Friday meeting at Demdike's home. Alice Nutter was unusual among the accused in being comparatively wealthy. The widow of a tenant yeoman farmer, she had made no statement either before or during the trial, except to enter her plea of not guilty to the charge of murdering Henry Mitten by witchcraft. The prosecution alleged that she, together with Demdike and Elizabeth Device, had caused Henry's death, and he refused to give Demdike a penny that she had begged from him. The only evidence against Alice seems to have been that James Device claimed Demdike had told him of the murder, and Jeanette Device in her statement said that Alice had been present at the Malkin Tower meeting. Alice may have called in on the meeting at Malkin Tower on her way to a secret and illegal Good Friday Catholic service and refused to speak for fearing of incriminating her fellow Catholics. Alice Nutter was found guilty and hung. Catherine Hewitt was charged and found guilty of murders of Anne Folds. She was the wife of a clother from Cologne and had attended the meeting at Malkin Tower with Alice Gray. According to the evidence given by James Device, both Catherine and Alice told others at the meeting that they had killed a child from Cologne named Anne Folds. Jeanette Device also picked Catherine out of a lineup and confirmed her attendance at the Malkin Tower meeting. Alice Gray was accused with Catherine Hewitt of the murder of Anne Folds, and there is no record of Catherine and Alice's trial, so we don't know if they were found guilty or not guilty. Court records show that Lancashire was an unusual in the north of England for the frequency of its witch trials. Neighbouring Cheshire, for instance, also suffered from economic problems and religious activists, but only 47 people were indicted for causing harm by witchcraft between 1589 and 1675, of whom 11 were found guilty. Pendle was part of the parish of Whalley, an area covering 180 square miles, too large to be effective in preaching and teaching of the doctrines of the Church of England. Both the survival of Catholicism and the upsurge in witchcraft in Lancashire have been attributed to its overstretched patriarchal structure. Until its dissolution, the spiritual needs of people of Pendle and surrounding districts have been survived nearby Whalley Abbey, but its closure in 1537 left a moral vacuum. Historian John Swain has said that the outbreaks of witchcraft in and around Pendle demonstrate the extent of which people could make a living by either posing as a witch or by accusing or threatening to accuse others of being a witch. Although it's implicit of much of the literature on witchcraft that the accused were victims, often mentally or physically abnormal, for some at least it may have been a trade like any other, albeit one with significant risks. Having played her part in the deaths of her mother, brother, and sister, Jeanette Device may have eventually found herself accused of witchcraft also. A woman with that name was listed in a group of 20 tried at the Lancaster Assizes on March 24, 1634, although it cannot be certain it was the same Jeanette Device. The charge against her was the murder of Isabel Nutter, William Nutter's wife. In that series of trials, the chief prosecution witness was a 10-year-old boy, Edmund Robinson. All but one of the accused were found guilty, but the judges refused to pass death sentences, deciding instead to refer to the case to the King, Charles I. Under cross-examination in London, Robinson admitted that he had fabricated his evidence, But even though 4 of the accused were eventually pardoned, they all remained incarcerated in Lancaster, which is where they likely died. An official record dated August 22nd, 1636 lists Jeanette Device as one of those still held in prison. And that is the Pendle Witch Trials.
Awesome. I love how apparently 10-year-olds and under are reliable witnesses.
Yeah. I don't know. It's crazy how... The craziest part of all of this to me is how... So there was the main 4 that were, accused, and then just by association, having this meeting with them, there was like a bunch of other people who got caught in the outfall, and how Jeanette accused her mother, brother, and sister of being witches, ended up many years later being accused of witchcraft herself.
See, but like, especially that one, I feel like somebody must have been whispering in her ear about certain things, either that or there was like a personal vendetta that they had against the family, where they were looking for like a fall guy, and then she herself would have been taken out years later, like it's just all feels very, very icky.
Yeah, I feel like, especially because like Chaddox gave a confession under torture, they probably didn't have too many qualms about forcing this 9-year-old girl to testify against her family.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is like, you can tell a 9-year-old anything you want to, and they believe most people, Like, if you said, if you tell us at this thing or at this trial that your mom and siblings are all witches, like, you'll all go free afterwards. Like, we just need somebody to say it.
Exactly. That's what I feel like happened. Like, they tricked her into testifying, and she didn't really realize the consequences of what would happen to her family. And she probably thought that she was doing what she was supposed to.
Well, and most kids, too, don't really understand conceptually what death even means until they're older anyways. Like, you could have said, like, if you say that your mom's a witch, like, she's gonna die, she might be thinking in her head, like, oh yeah, like, she'll go to sleep, like what she does at nighttime, and wake up tomorrow.
Yeah. I don't know. And the fact that the kid in Jeanette's trial later was like, I was actually lying. But they're like, it's fine. We're going to keep you all in prison anyway.
Yeah, that's the thing, too, is like, okay, so you'll take anything that this child says as fact, and then later on when they say that they're lying, it doesn't matter because obviously they must have been telling the truth. Like, it makes no sense to me, is what I'm trying to say.
Makes no sense to me either. But that's it for my story. I cannot wait to hear what you have in store for us today, Em.
Well, I am curious about whether or not you know this one already, because it is a little bit of a popular story.
Oh, what is it?
So, I'm going to begin with my description, and then I think I've covered this story also maybe in the past, but only in part, because I like taking more in-depth stories sometimes, but I also couldn't find my information on this one if I had covered it before. So I'll mention it to you, and then you can give me the juice on what you think. But my description is: the Bell Witch, or the Bell Witch Haunting, is a legend from the southern United States folklore centered on the 19th century Bell family of northwest Robertson County, Tennessee. Farmer John Bell Sr. resided with his family along the Red River in the area, currently near the town of Adams. According to legend, from 1817 to 1821, his family and the local area came under attack by a mostly invisible entity that was able to speak, affect the physical environment, and shapeshift. Some accounts record that the spirit also to have clairvoyant and capable of crossing long distances with superhuman speed and or being able to be in more than one place at one time.
I don't think you've told this story, / I don't think I know this story.
Okay, they did make a horror movie based around this family, but I didn't put it in my notes, and I couldn't quite remember what the name of it was. It might be later on in my notes, but I didn't put it in the beginning with the description and stuff, which would have probably been helpful. But but I feel like once I tell you, you might get a little bit more of an idea of what it's about. So, are you ready?
I'm ready. Take her away.
All right. So John Bell was born in Halifax County, North Carolina in 1750, the son of William Bell and Anne Jones. In 1782, John Bell married Lucy Williams, daughter of a prominent farmer named John Williams of Edgecombe County in North Carolina. The Bells bought a farm in Edgecombe County and began amassing wealth and influence in the area. In 1804, the family, consisting of John and Lucy Bell and their children Jesse, John Jr. Drury, Benjamin Esser Zadok, Elizabeth Richard Williams, and Joel Egbert, built a house and started a farm on 1,000 acres located on the Red River in Robertson County, Tennessee. Of their children, Benjamin died as a young child, which was also a young age, and Zadok became a prominent lawyer and moved to Mississippi, where he also died relatively young. Esther married Bennett Porter in 1817, and Jessie married Martha Gunn, daughter of Reverend Thomas Gunn, and later moved to Mississippi. John Bell Jr. married Elizabeth Gunn, also daughter of Reverend Thomas Gunn, and became a successful farmer in Robertson County. Drury never married and owned a farm on the north side of the Red River, and Elizabeth, also known as Betsy Bell, eventually married her former teacher, Richard Powell, and moved to Mississippi, which, like, of everything, I had to squint my eyes out of a couple things. The first one being they had a child named Zadok. And the second thing being 2 of the siblings married children of the same reverend. So that's the second thing I'm squinting at. And the third thing that I'm squinting at is Betsy marrying her former teacher and then moving to another county.
See, I'm just stuck on the fact that both of our stories somehow have a random person from Halifax.
Well, yours, I think, was yours Halifax County, though, or actual, like, Canada Halifax?
Canada Halifax.
Okay, mine's from Halifax County in Mississippi. So similar, but you're onto something.
In my head, they're both from Halifax, Canada.
I mean, technically not wrong, in a way. But yes, so, Richard Williams Bell was married 3 times to Sally Gunn, another daughter of Reverend Thomas Gunn, Susan Gunn, a daughter of Reverend James Gunn, which is, like, another member of the family who's also a reverend. And
this guy's got so many children,
and they were all girls. I know, that's what I'm saying. And Eliza Orndorff, and he lived out his life in Robertson County, and the youngest child, Joel Egbert, married twice and moved to Springfield. So, despite the lasting impact of what the Bells termed our family trouble, the family continued to flourish, and some descendants of the Bells still live in Tennessee and other southern and midwestern states. So, here's where our story begins. The origin of the legendary Bell Witch is, of course, a mystery. In early accounts, the spirit itself provides its origin, stating, "I am a spirit. I was once very happy, but I have been disturbed and made unhappy. I am the spirit of a person who was buried in the woods nearby, and the grave was disturbed. My bones disinterred and scattered, and one of my teeth was lost under this house. I am here looking for that tooth." Of course, this cannot be verified. However, a number of Indian burial mounds can be found in the region, so it's kind of one of those things where you're like, maybe. And
perhaps.
Perhaps. And in another event, the witch claimed to be a spirit from everywhere, heaven, hell, the earth. I'm in the air, the houses, any place at any time. I have been created for millions of years.
That's what I would say, too.
Yeah, right? I'm like, either this ghost is, like, very dramatic, or the other thing, which I think I'm going to mention later on, is that this isn't a ghost, but a lot of people do think it might be, like, a poltergeist.
I think it's a ghost living for the drama, wearing a silly costume, just waiting for people to be spooked, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna serve all the drama. I was murdered in this duck costume.
And you will hear about it. So, the first appearance of unusual disturbances surrounding the Bell family is usually reported as an incident on the farm in which John Bell fired a shot at a quote-unquote dog-like creature, which then vanished afterwards. Drury and Betsy also began to see strange creatures near the property. These sights are accompanied by strange sounds around the house. Betsy, Drury, and John begin to hear unaccounted for knocking on the door and windows, and the sounds of wings flapping against the ceiling, and the sound of rats gnawing on the bedposts. More disturbingly, the sound of choking and strangling could be heard, along with chains dragging and heavy objects hitting the floor. Sounds emanating from the bedroom as if beds were suddenly and roughly pulled apart, to which was added to the sounds of fighting dogs chained together, making the noise deafening. In all cases, the source of the noise was never found. No rats were found in the home despite there being a search, and no damage to the furniture was ever discovered. During these demonstrations, the family refused to speak of the events to their neighbors. The then spirit, increased its activity, sometimes physically abusing the members of the family. Joel, Richard Williams, and especially Betsy were subjected to being struck, pinched, and having their hair pulled relentlessly by the Bell Witch. Lucy Bell and John Jr. were left relatively unharmed by the witch. Lucy was proclaimed by the spirit to be the most perfect woman alive, and the witch showed a great deal of compassion towards her, even caring for her and singing to her while she was ill. John Jr. had a long, intense conversation with the witch, but he never failed to show his animosity for it and declared it to be the spirit of the damned. Which, I find it very icky that the witch has picked a favorite and is calling them a perfect woman. Bad vibes.
Yeah, that is not my favorite thing you've ever told me. Don't love that. Already exhibiting abusive behavior, and now this? They're on thin ice.
That's what I'm saying. So, a family friend, William Porter, claimed that the witch climbed into bed with him, allowing him the opportunity to seize the spirit, quote unquote, in the bedclothes, and attempted to throw it into the fire, saying only that the immense weight of it and the terrible smell of the witch prevented him from succeeding. So that's something.
That is something for sure.
Right? And then the witch had a dislike for the family slaves, tormenting them relentlessly, beating them, and refusing to allow them into the house, which, their life is hard enough, okay?
Literally give them a break. They've done nothing. They are forced to be there also. So
that's the thing. They do not want to be there as much as you don't want to be there. So why are you making life harder for everybody?
That is just, we don't vibe with that behavior.
Right? So, a Bell slave named Dean stated he encountered the witch several times and that it appeared frequently in the form of a large black dog or wolf. Sometimes it had 2 heads, and sometimes it came by with no head. Dean also claimed to have been turned into a mule and attacked several times by the witch. He carried with him at all times his axe and a witch ball, made by his wife as a form of protection from the witch's influence. So, now we move on to Betsy Bell. So, John Bell Sr. and Betsy Bell seem to be the 2 most frequently abused by the witch. For reasons still unclear, the witch adamantly opposed the union of childhood sweethearts, and Betsy Bell and Joshua Gardner, who had been childhood sweethearts, the witch had frequently resorted to ruthless taunts and physical abuse of the 2 of them. Joshua and Betsy remained attached, but she put off marriage in fear of the spirit's reprisal against her. And the witch's attacks on Betsy were not at all related to her relationship with Gardner, allegedly, and the constant threat of the witch began to affect her in such a way that she became prone to fainting spells and smothering sensations, so panic attacks, and often appeared exhausted and lifeless. Her experiences were not confined to the Bell property either. Betsy later describes this one incident. When the spirit became so tantalizing, filling my mind with horror and causing me to become so nervous, my parents often sent me to a neighbor's to rest for the night. My first night away from home was spent with Thany Thorne. When we retired, there came a loud knocking on the outside door, which seemed then to fly open, and a great gust of wind was felt. Thany sprang up at once and lit a candle. To our surprise, the door was not open. Then a voice spoke softly, "Betsy, you should not have come over here. You know I can follow you anywhere. Now get a good night's sleep." And a soft hand patted my cheek, and the voice again assured us that we would not be disturbed any more that night. The rest of the family often attempted to give Betsy relief, and a family friend named Frank Miles promised to protect Betsy from further abuse by the spirit. Betsy said Frank was the most powerful man any of us ever saw, and just as fearless as any living man. One time he said to me, "Come sit by my little sister," or "Come sit by me, little sister, nothing will bother you while I am here." And the witch responded, "You go home. You can do no good here." The witch then began abusing Betsy, slapping her and pulling her hair before turning on Miles, knocking him over and enraging him. So, Betsy continued to endure the spirit's abuse, and after calling off the marriage to Gardner, Betsy was eventually courted by and married to her former school teacher, Richard Powell. Despite the apparent abatement of the witch's torments, in 1820 she left the area with her husband and settled in Mississippi.
Well, at least the witch lady gave Betsy one night of reprieve while she was still in that house.
Yes, lucky. So...
She's so lucky. She should not be complaining about anything.
Right?
How generous.
How dare she? So that's fun. And then one of the central goals of the Bell Witch seemed to be the death of John Bell Sr. Old Jack Bell, as the spirit called him, was blasted with curses, heinous threats, and serious physical torments. As the abuse continued to impact his psyche, Bell took to his bed and was cared for by John Jr. On December 19th, 1820, John Bell failed to leave his bed, and John Jr. went to the cupboard to retrieve the medicine for his care. Instead of 3 medicine vials, he found only 1 vial, and it was 1/3 full of a dark, smoky, unknown origin. The voice of the witch gloated, "It's useless for you to try to relieve old Jack. I've got him this time, and he will never get out of that bed again." She claimed that the vial that she gave old Jack a big dose of it last night while he's fast asleep, which fixed him. And the contents of the vial were then thrown into the fire and erupted into a blue haze. John Bell died December 20th, 1820, and the Bell Witch crashed the funeral, disrupting the service, and began singing bawdy drinking songs, which, like...
This witch is dramatic, okay? Like, there is not even a question in my mind anymore.
No, the most dramatic.
She wins the award for most dramatic witch we've ever talked about.
But I do say, like, even though I agree with literally nothing else that she's done so far, crashing somebody's funeral just to sing bawdy drinking songs because you didn't like them in life... She's ballsy, I'll give her that.
Like, it's kind of iconic, but I hate everything else she's done so far. She's kind of a legend,
but I don't want to say that I like her.
Exactly.
Right? So then, I have another legend for you about the Bell Witch. So, legend has it that the Bell Witch even had an encounter with the then future President Andrew Jackson. Jackson owned property... Yeah, right? Jackson owned property on the Red River. What is happening to you?
I just can't even handle that. I don't know why that information...
I promise you it gets worse. Just hang on.
Oh my god.
So, Jackson owned property on the Red River and desired to visit the Bell farm after hearing these stories. One of his wagons became stuck by an unseen force and could not be moved despite whipping the horses. What?
Like, it just reminds me of you, where you're like, listen, this place is haunted, we have to go check it out.
Okay, I will say that in that sense, me and Andrew Jackson we have a kinship.
You do, in that sense.
God. Right? So then, one of his wagons became stuck by an unseen force and could not be moved despite whipping the horses, examining the wheels, and having it pushed by the men in his party. He exclaimed, "By the eternal, boys, this is the witch." To which the witch replied, "All right, General, let the wagon move on. I will see you again tonight." The wagon then...
I'll see you in hell, General.
That's what I mean. It literally sounds like she's trying to set up, like, a date, kind of, but, like, in hell with Andrew Jackson.
She's like, we're going on a date, but not one you're gonna like, so buckle up.
But I promise you're gonna hate it, so get ready. The wagon started moving of its own accord, and they continued their journey. That evening at camp, a self-proclaimed witch layer, or witch hunter, who had joined them, said he had a silver bullet and regaled the men with tales of hunting witches. Jackson whispered to a colleague, "I'll bet this fellow is an errant coward. By the eternals, I do wish the thing would come, because I want to see him run." After which silence followed. Suddenly there was the sound of light footsteps prancing around on the floor, and a voice stated, "All right, General, I am on hand and ready for business." And the witch bade the witch hunter to shoot, but the gun did not fire. The hunter was struck by an unseen force, claimed to feel pain of being stuck by needles, and exclaimed that he had been grabbed by the nose. And then he fled from the tent. The witch then exclaimed, "How the devil did run and beg. I bet he won't come through here again with his old horse pistol to shoot me. I guess that's fun enough for tonight, General. And you can go to bed now. I will come by tomorrow night and show you another rascal in this crowd."
See? it's icon behavior, but she's not a good icon. We're not rooting for her, but I'm here for the drama.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, tell me more, but like, not saying I agree with her, but yes, I do want to hear more about what she has to say.
Exactly.
Right? So Jackson was eager to stay, but his party had enough, and Jackson then returned to Nashville shortly after this experience. So,
see, that's like me and you. You're like, let's just stay, see where the night takes us, and I'm like, we're going. We're done.
Yeah, you're like, I think I actually have somewhere to be.
I forgot. I have to water my lawn.
Yeah, the front one, the back one, and then the neighbor's one. I've got a busy night ahead of me.
I also left my oven on, so we really better hurry.
Yeah, right? So then, Mary Catherine Kate Batts, who died after 1847, was the wife of Frederick Batts, and was believed by many to have been the culprit behind the disturbances known as the Bell Witch. So, although not a poor woman, she was often mocked by others throughout the Red River settlement in Robertson County for her improper usage of words, aka swearing, along with her sometimes strange ways, led many to believe that she was practicing black magic or some other form of the occult. And in the early years of the century, Benjamin Batts, the brother of Frederick Batts, had a dispute with John Bell over the sale of a slave. Facts of the dispute were later tangled and became the source of a rumor to the effect that John Bell and Kate Batts had a quarrel and that the Bell Witch was created by Kate Batts to get revenge on Bell. While there are plenty of stories connecting the Bell Witch to Kate Batts and some sort of disagreement that existed between her and John Bell, recent evidence suggests that she had nothing to do with it regardless. In fact, contrary to reports of her claiming that she would get even with John Bell on her deathbed, Kate Batts actually outlived John Bell by many years. Today, there are many descendants of the Batts family living in Cheatham, Montgomery, and Robertson County still. So they basically tried to pin the witchcraft on somebody by claiming she was a witch, and literally she was like, that couldn't have happened because I'm not dead yet.
You see how I'm still standing right here, right now, and we're having this conversation? Yeah, I feel like that's proof enough.
She's like, there is your proof. The end. I will see myself out.
Exactly.
Right? So then, though it played a relatively minor role in the original Bell Witch legend of the early 19th century, the cave on John Bell's property has since then become a focal point for visitors hoping to experience a bit of the haunting themselves. Added to the National Historical Registry in 2008, the cave is the only original feature from the legend that can still be seen today and is largely unchanged from the way the Bell family would have seen it in 1817. Though numerous eerie events have been reported by visitors to the cave, including the renowned difficulty in taking photographs around the site in the pre-digital age, nothing on the scale of the original haunting centered around the Bell House and has long since been torn down and has been reported since the early 1800s. So, to wrap it up, following the death of John Bell, the witch's activity dropped off sharply. The spirit was still active through the winter and spring of 1821, but it soon bade the family farewell, telling them it would be gone for 7 years. True to its word, the family remaining on the property, Lucy, Richard Williams, and Joel, claimed that the witch did return in February 1828, reappearing in much the same way as it appeared the first time, by shaking beds and unexplained noises. It soon vanished again, claiming that it would return to haunt the Bell descendants once again in 1935, but no other specific hauntings of the Bell family or their property on this level experienced in the early 19th century have since then been reported. Despite this, unexplained activity in and around the Bell farm in Adams, Tennessee continues. Various encounters near the property along the old Nashville-Clarksville Road and in the famous Bell Witch Cave still draw tourists and ghost hunters to Adams. The Bell Witch has been the subject of countless modern books, analysis, and documentaries and movies, including, here's where it is, this was my mistake, including the 2006 wide-release motion picture An American Haunting, very loosely based on the Bell Witch legend. Though the haunting of the Bell family apparently ended nearly 200 years ago, tales of the Bell Witch are as compelling in 2009, which is kind of where they've wrapped up their information on the Bell Witch haunting, as they were in 1819.
Has Donald Sutherland in it.
There you go.
Well, The Bell Witch was so famous, she made it to the big screen. So I'm sure she's proud.
I think it's exactly what she would have wanted.
Me too.
After getting to know her in this story, I think that this is probably what her goal was, actually. I think that more than anything, she's like, yes, please make a dramatic retelling and put it on the film for everybody to see.
She's like, this way I can continue frightening audiences for years to come.
Across the world. And with that brings us to the end of our Season of the Witch episode. Woo!
Whoop whoop. Yes, that's it. That's all. And next week is our Halloween special. So, we are going to be reading some listener stories and maybe some Reddit ones too, just to mix it up a little bit. But if you want your story to be read, we would love to hear it. In the link, or you can fill out a Google form, which can be found in our Instagram bio. So head over there to find the link and tell us about your ghost or paranormal story so that we can share it here for everyone.
Yes, I, for one, will also be looking forward to it. I think it'll be a great time, and I cannot wait to hear what some of you guys have experienced. I love a good spooky story.
Me too.
Yes. And with that brings us to the official end of today's episode. Thank you for sticking around and listening to us. If you would like to contact us with your own story outside of the Google form aforementioned by Jen, you can also email us, wheelofcrime@gmail.com, and talk to us there, even if you just have a passing thought. We love talking to you guys. As well, we also have our social media that you can follow us on, which is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Wheel of Crime for show updates if you want to take a look at us there. We also have our website, which is www.wheelofcrime.com if you want to check us out and find out more about us and see what we have to offer. Besides that, we also have a Patreon, which is at Wheel of Crime if you want to donate to the show and get a little something for your efforts. And lastly, please don't be afraid to leave us a review. We want to know the different ways that we can improve, that we're doing a good job, if that is the case. As always, the whole point is to become better through time, and if we don't hear anything, what's the point, you know? So you can leave us a review on wherever podcasts are heard, basically. And that's and that's it.
That's it. That's all. We will see you next week for the Spooktober finale. I'm so excited. Okay, bye.
Bye.